Hello and welcome to the Digital Debate Center. Today we're going to be talking about college applications, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk to Sukriti, who's going to talk about choosing the right college. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to her.
Okay, so today I just wanted to give you some tips and tricks on how to kind of go about choosing the right college and making your decision. And we're just gonna have like how you're gonna get started, some things you should consider, and then how to narrow down your list. So getting started. So I think the first thing you should do is consider your priorities and like only pick 1 to 2 of your like top clear priorities, and this will help you like be able to choose your colleges and really be able to like narrow down which ones you can spend time and energy on. And then additionally, consider like secondary priorities, and then later these can be used as like kind of tiebreakers, like um, and are there any deal breakers? So I would try to like list these things out beforehand so it can really guide your search and you don't have to even waste your time looking at colleges that kind of don't fit these initial categories. And then I would make kind of a starting list. So look at some schools that maybe you've already heard of, and then do some extra research on schools that you may not have heard of and ask people you know as well. And it could be longer than the list that you intend to apply to because you just want to kind of collect and research a lot of colleges at first. So then what are some considerations that you want? So first is that we have to look at the quality of undergraduate education. How focused are the professors on their students, which is sometimes like there's very research focused schools. So you should look at how, like you can look at ratings and research about that. And what are the college's strengths academically, no matter what type of colleges it is, they could be emphasizing well-rounded education versus sometimes they have like really strong departments. And especially if you want to do something in STEM, I feel like maybe look at, definitely make sure that they have a strong engineering department or physics department if that's something you're interested in, because those are sometimes specialized. And the next thing I think is probably an important consideration for most people is cost. So remember to consider both tuition and cost of living. Like if you're living in a very expensive area, that might be harder because sometimes schools don't guarantee housing. If it's a very out of like, obviously if it's out of state, you might have to pay more. So things like that. Check for availability of need or merit-based scholarships in schools, and that might influence your decision on choosing the right college as well, and it might make it more worth it to you to apply to certain colleges. But they might have different deadlines to apply for these things, to make sure to check early when you're doing your research. And next thing I think is maybe not as important as the other two, but size. It's like class sizes really can affect the impact or quality of education. So I guess it does tie in a little bit to that, but also there's like a campus feel, like a huge college versus a small one. Location, is it far away from home? Is it close to home? Which one would you prefer? And weather's like maybe a little bit less secondary, but it is important that you enjoy your 4 years there. So it could be in consideration, maybe a tiebreaker one. And extracurricular interests. I put this really low kind of on the list. This is kind of by priority, but I put this kind of low on the list because most colleges do have, I think, a decent amount of social clubs or groups, and you can find your place there. But maybe if you have like a really specialized interest, like doing policy debate, you want to like look at a college that maybe like has that, or sports or arts or music or programs or whatever you're interested in. So now we have a long list, we've thought about our considerations, and we have to narrow down which ones are we actually going to apply to. I would say to shortlist first, as that apply your most important considerations first, and then like your tiebreaker considerations, and you can decide how important those are. And like obviously those are the 5 that I had on the slide is not the only ones that you can think about. We can research further on those colleges if they so you can have a better idea of like those considerations and kind of where the college actually stands on those. And then for quality versus quantity, and on one hand I know people say like, oh, like you only apply to a few like colleges, which is definitely true. You do not want to overburden yourself, and you want to make sure that you are spending a decent amount of time really going through the main Common App and your main essay for sure. But also you have like college is about chance. Like no matter how good your application is, it's always going to be a decent amount of chance. Like there's schools can be really selective. So Don't be afraid of that, but also have a few, so don't put all your eggs in one basket is what I'm trying to say. So you have to find the balance between the two. And next is just, there's three, you can organize your list in 3 tiers, which might help you kind of narrow down your list as well, because you would want a first tier to be kind of schools that you're like pretty sure that you're going to get into, and you don't have to spend that much time on the application, but you make sure you get a few of those in. So like you for sure, like if you want to pursue higher education, like you will have a place to do that. And then you can, then you'll have like a second tier where you will have schools where you have some chance of getting accepted, but it's not for sure. So I think this is where you want to spend the majority of your time and the best efforts, because they're like probably the schools that you would best fit into. And then I would limit your like reach school applications. I know, especially if the applications are really long, because you don't want to waste your time, but also it's a game of luck and chance, and there's strong applicants all the time. So don't be afraid to have a couple of those as well. So my final thoughts are just like, do not stress about the decision too much, especially for your undergraduate degree. It's really great that if you're in that position, it's really great that you are pursuing higher education, and it's more important how engaged you are with your academic and personal growth. And you know, you can always transfer if you really, really don't like it after the first year. So good luck.
Next, we're going to have Riya talk about how to apply to colleges. She'll be talking about the difference between different types of deadlines, Common App, as well as some other tips and tricks. So whenever you're ready, Riya, take it away.
All right. So I'm going to be talking about the college application process, how you formulate your college applications, different routes you can take when you're going through that process. So first, there's 3 main options you have when you're applying to colleges, when you're starting to write the daunting college application. The first one is something called the Common App. The second one is something called QuestBridge. And the third one is just applying through the individual college or university that you're interested in. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Common App. The Common App is essentially a portal that accumulates all the data from all these different colleges you might be looking at. There's hundreds and hundreds of schools on there. And then you put a pool of information, your essays, your recommendations, supplementals. I'll talk a little about which each of those are, but you're going to put all that background information, and then you can use that to send to each one of your schools. And the Common App does that for you. So it'll basically collect all of those background details of your college application and send it out for you to every single school you're applying for. And there are some schools that aren't on the Common App, but most schools that you'll be applying to are almost always on the Common App. So there's a couple different components of your Common App application. The first one is some background information, just general transcripts, sort of what you were involved in your school, resumes, things like that. The next thing, which you'll hear the most about, is your Common App essay. So this is when people say they're writing their college essay, this is usually what they're referring to. The Common App essay is kind of like a personal statement. It's your big overview of who you are as an applicant, what you're interested in. The Common App will usually provide you with 3 different prompts, and then you'll pick one and write your personal statement based off of that. It can be something about your life experience, sometimes they'll have describe a time you've been challenged, things like that. Very generic prompts that'll give the schools you're applying to a better sense of who you are as an applicant. And then that essay will go out to all the schools you're applying for. On top of that, when you go to apply to each school through this Common App portal, you might see something called a supplement. So if you're applying to one school, they might ask you to write more essays on top of your Common App essay. So they'll get your personal statement, and they might ask you to do a couple of other essay prompts on top of that. We call those supplements. Those are different from school to school, but the Common App will have the information under each school profile, whether or not they ask for supplements, what those supplement topics are, and then you'll also fill out all of those on the Common App. You don't have to send them individually to each school. You just do it all in that one portal. And then last but not least, you'll also upload recommendation letters from teachers or coaches, whoever is writing your college recommendation. You'll upload that into the Common App portal, and those will also go to all of your schools. So it's a very convenient way to apply to colleges. Like I said, most schools you're applying to will be on the Common App, and you can apply to those schools through the Common App. That said, some downsides of the Common App is that you do have to pay an application fee for every school that you're applying to. So if you're applying to a lot of schools, those fees can rack up, which can be difficult for some people. On top of that, it doesn't always have every single school you might be applying to, so that's another challenge. But really, if you're looking for application fee waivers, or if you fall in a more lower income bracket, then another option that might be great for you is QuestBridge. So QuestBridge is basically the same thing as the Common App, but the process is more scholarship geared. The main difference between the Common App and QuestBridge is that anyone who wants to use the Common App can use it. You create a profile on there and then you go ahead and start applying. QuestBridge is a little bit more selective. So QuestBridge is not just sort of a gateway that lets you apply to colleges. It provides you scholarships for actually attending those colleges. So the way that QuestBridge works is you start an application to be accepted to the QuestBridge program around the summer before your senior year, so late summer. And then should you be accepted into QuestBridge, they'll start you on a college match process. So when you do that college matching process, you'll rank a certain number of colleges. If they rank you similarly, if they're interested in you as an applicant, then you might be provided scholarships to attend those colleges. So this is definitely an option for high achieving low income students. If you're looking for those fee waivers, or if you're looking for scholarships to attend the schools that you're interested in, then QuestBridge is definitely a really fantastic option. QuestBridge also is pretty broad in terms of the schools it actually includes in its database. Just like the Common App, there's over hundreds of schools you can apply to through that common portal. QuestBridge is the same way. You can apply to hundreds and hundreds of schools. You can choose to rank hundreds and hundreds of schools through that portal, so it's very convenient. Another really common way that people choose to go about doing their college applications. And so the last thing I want to touch on is, when exactly are you supposed to do this? When do you have to finish your college applications by? And so this is, you'll hear a lot of these terms when we're talking about deadlines. So the three really important ones I want to touch on are early decision, early action, and regular decision. So early decision is usually the first deadline you'll see, one of the earliest deadlines to actually submit your college application, get that essay in, get your recommendations in, get all that background info in, the whole package. This usually happens sometimes late November or December. And the key thing to note about early decision is that it is a binding decision. If you choose to submit your application under the early decision deadline, then if you are accepted to that college that you applied to early decision, you cannot go to any other school. So you have to be really certain that if you're applying early decision, you are positive that you want to attend that school, because once you are accepted early decision, you'll have to withdraw your applications from all other schools. You will no longer be in those applicant pools. So it's very crucial that you're sure that that's where you want to go. Another con to potentially applying early decision is that if you do apply early decision, then your chances for scholarships or financial aid might be a little bit lower because the colleges will already have you insured as an applicant. So if you're interested in financial aid or scholarships, then early decision might not necessarily be advisable. But if you have a school that you love, that you know you want, and you know you want to go there, then early decision is potentially a good option. Your chance of getting accepted might be a little bit higher. The next deadline is early action. This deadline is usually around the same time as early decision, but the main difference is that early action is non-binding while early decision is binding. So if you get accepted to a school early action, then even if you're accepted, you can still turn down your acceptance. You don't have to go there. You don't have to withdraw your applications from other schools. It's just sort of a jump start on the process. Your application will get looked at a little bit earlier. Your chances of getting admitted might be a little bit higher. So early action is really the best option for any deadline. If you can get your application in earlier, go ahead and do it. It's non-binding. You really have nothing to lose other than maybe crunch time on your applications a little bit sooner. But early action is a really fantastic option for all your college applications. The final deadline is regular decision. So just to go over an overview, early action, early decision, both of those deadlines pass at the same time. that'll be November, December, significantly earlier than other schools. Sometimes even like October, you'll see people having their early decision, early action deadlines. And then regular decision happens all the way into the next year. So that's the last round of deadlines. You'll find out later, it's non-binding. So all the components of early action, same thing, but the deadline passes later. If you apply, the biggest risk for a regular decision is that if you choose to apply, then that's where it's the most difficult to be accepted in your colleges, especially if it's a competitive college, because that's the largest pool of applicants. So the benefit is that you have more time to actually work on your application, but definitely something to consider if you do decide to apply later on in the application cycle. But those are all the sort of timelines, deadlines for when you should start going about these processes. So I hope that was all helpful.
Today we're talking about college applications, and to close us out, Sophia is going to talk about financial aid because it's kind of important to pay for the things you're applying for. And whenever you're ready, Sophia, take it away.
Hi everybody, I'm Sophia. I'm a junior at Emory, and I'm going to be talking about financial aid, which is super important, just as important as applying for colleges. I'm going to share my presentation. So there's a lot of different types of financial aid, and I think usually it's pretty overwhelming and very daunting. So the main point of this presentation is just to kind of break it down for you guys and make it less intimidating so that you can also start this process early as you also start applying for colleges. So you guys can just kind of see some of the different examples here up on the screen. And so the first two I want to talk about are FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, and the CSS profile. And so I would say these are the two most important applications for financial aid that you should fill out. And just like how college applications go, the same goes for financial aid in terms of the sooner you fill it out, kind of the better. You can sort of think of it almost as like early action. So for FAFSA, the most important thing is that it's owned by the government. And so you'll apply to this and they'll give you financial aid based on how much they think that you and your family need to pay for college. And then for CSS profile, not every university requires it, but definitely look into if your university requires you to fill out a profile. And it's similar to FAFSA, it's just asking for more information about your family's finances. And then the deadlines that I found online is that it opens October 1st, which is pretty soon. So you guys can look out for that. And then it's not due until June of next year, which makes sense because you typically apply to colleges a year in advance. And I know that that deadline, especially with the year saying a different year than what it is now, sounds really far away. But when you're so busy with senior year and applying, you'll realize that that deadline creeps up on you a lot faster than you would think. So the main idea is the sooner the better. There's no such thing as too early. A lot of times what will happen is you'll be going through your profile or application and you'll realize that it'll ask you for documents that you didn't have, so you might have to run and get it and then pause your application and come back to it later. So the process is a lot longer than being able to sit and do it in one sitting. So if you're looking to go to an in-state school, we're very lucky that Georgia has Hope and Zell B. Miller. And these are scholarships, they're merit-based scholarships. And so they're pretty similar, and I think a lot of people sort of get confused between the two. So I'm just kind of going to break down the differences. So in order to qualify for Hope, you need to finish high school with a 3.0 GPA. And so that includes every semester or quarter, whatever your school goes by, and it averages out all those GPAs. So your final average has to be a 3.0. Versus for Zell, your final average at the end of high school has to be a 3.7. And every school does their GPA system a little bit differently. So if you check on Georgia Futures, it'll actually kind of recalculate your GPA and let you know if you've qualified for either Hope or Zell. And then, so just because you get the Hope or Zell Miller scholarship right out of high school, you also have to be able to maintain it. And to maintain it in college, for Hope, you need to keep the 3.0, and that checks it every spring semester in college. So they'll average your fall semester and your spring semester. So if you didn't do as good in the fall, that's okay. You still have the spring to kind of bring your GPA up and average it to make it a 3.0. And then to keep Zell in college, you have to do the same, but instead of 3.0, it's 3.3. And then the other thing with Zell is that you can only get Zell right out of high school as a senior. So even if you get a 3.7 GPA your first semester of college, but you didn't get that GPA at the end of high school, you can't qualify for Zell anymore, unfortunately, but you can still always qualify for HOPE. And then the Zell also requires a couple more requirements, such as getting a 1200 SAT minimum score and a 26 ACT minimum score, and that's cumulative. And it has to be within one test. So I don't think it super scores it. And then to also maintain Zell in college, you have to have at least attempted 12 credit hours. If you're a senior in high school watching this, in college, typically one class is anywhere between 2 to 4 credits. It's typically 3, but it depends on the university that you go to. Versus if you want to qualify for HOPE, there's no minimum credit hours that you need unless you go to a private school in which you need to be enrolled in 6. So not attempted 6 hours, but enrolled in 6 hours. And so another way that people can finance their education is through loans. And loans are definitely intimidating to a lot of people, but there's 3 basic kinds of loans. You'll also be able to find out if you qualify for loans and what types of loans that you qualify for based on filling out the FAFSA, which is why that FAFSA is very important to do. So the first type is subsidized loans, and a lot of times if you do take out a loan, the schools, it's most preferable for you to take out this type of loan first. And the biggest reason for that is because you don't accumulate any interest. A lot of times the interest doesn't start until 6 months after the day that you graduate, which is great because it's less that you'll have to pay off of the loan. And then unsubsidized loans are similar to subsidized loans. The only difference is that the interest accumulates when you start taking the loan and when they disperse your first amount versus having that nice 6-month grace period after graduation. And then private loans, you can also take those out. That will be through it's not through the government, it's sort of through like a third party that can loan you out the money. And those interest rates and their guidelines depend on where you take the loan out. That's just something for you to kind of look into a little bit more if that's an option that you choose. So besides FAFSA and the government and taking out loans, there's a lot of other ways that you can also pay for school. So a work study is one way that you can do that. And a lot of times the school will offer sort of student-run jobs that you can earn money through to help you pay for school. That also is based off of FAFSA, another reason why FAFSA is so important to do. And then there are lots of different kinds of scholarships. So if you want to do a debate scholarship, which would be super cool, that's definitely a possibility. Some schools do it right out of high school. And then other schools might also have you debate for them a year, and then you might get that scholarship your sophomore, junior, and senior year. So it really just depends. Definitely reach out to the university's debate coordinator, though, if that's something that you're interested in. And then other scholarships include athletic scholarships and presidential scholarships. So every school has their own version of presidential scholarship. Presidential scholarship is merit-based, and that basically means that everything is covered to attend that university. And so I know at Emory, it's called the Robert Woodruff scholarship, and like at Georgia Tech, it's called STAMPS. There's typically a couple of rounds to get to that end of the presidential scholarship where everything is paid for. But even if you don't make it to the very, very end round of the presidential scholarship, you can also still get to the other rounds. For example, maybe you make it past the first round, but you don't make it to the third and final round. Well, everyone who makes it past the first round can get a different level of a scholarship. An example of that is like at Georgia Tech, they have STAMP scholarship, which is the final round. And then if you don't make it to the final round, you can be a gold scholar and you still get like 75% of your education paid for. So in order to do that, most of the time you have to apply early action. Always, always, always on Common App, make sure there's not a little box that you're missing to put a check mark and say, please automatically consider me for a presidential scholarship. So that's something to keep your eyes open when you're applying to colleges. And then there are also other merit-based scholarships, either through your university or through like either another company or an organization. And some final tips, some really, really big takeaways is to always start early, because the financial aid process is definitely not the easiest process, but it's definitely doable. And I think it'll take you it's a learning process. So maybe this first time that you're doing it, it's a little bit difficult, but then when you do it, if you decide to keep going, advancing your education, trying to do the financial aid process for the next year, it'll definitely get a lot easier because you kind of know what to expect. You know all the forms that you need to have at hand. And then the last tip I would say is to ask for help. It's hard to do on your own. So ask your mom, your dad, your grandmother, anyone that might be able to help you kind of work through the financial aid process of how to apply. A lot of times you might have to go to your parent or guardian to ask for certain forms and tax returns that you yourself might not own, but your parents do keep track of. But you can also always talk to maybe someone you know that already is in college that had to do the financial aid process. And then you can always reach out to any potential school that you're looking into applying to, and you can always email them or call them, and they'll always get back to you. So at the very, very end, I have just a couple important links to kind of make it easier. I think if you're not able to get these links directly, you can always just go into Google and type it in, and typically the first few links it should be able to pop up. The one that I really do want to talk about, though, is Georgia Futures. So that is definitely important, especially if you go to an in-state school. Not only can you check right out of high school what you qualify for, but throughout college, you can also check every spring semester to see what your GPA is to make sure that you continue to stay on top of things and are still qualified for Hope and Zell. And then for external scholarships, I just kind of attached another link here. A lot of scholarships might give you money based off of writing an essay or other merit-based scholarships or things that you are interested in studying for. So it never hurts to look at those. You never know what might happen if you apply. And then some other resources regarding like if you have any questions, I personally like to watch YouTube videos about people who have kind of gone through the process. And then always like reading articles, and sometimes people have tips that you might not have thought of before, but actually really, really help you in your process. So I really encourage you guys to start early, and good luck with the process.